she was beautiful. She was a very beautiful baby. For me, I particularly was pleased to have a daughter. I'd long ago made up my mind that if I did have a daughter, that I would call her Josephine, and I would want her to have the shortened version of that, because Jo in Little Women, as with a million other women, was my hero.
I can remember my mum probably, you know, from a very, very young age. I would think probably when I was 2 or something like that. She was quite strict when we were sort of very small kids. And I think the weird thing is, when you're a very young kid, your mum seems incredibly old, you know, and she must only have been sort of in her early 20s. But looking back on it now, I feel that she probably looked about 50 at the time.
In my working life, when things have been really tough, and I thought, I don't think I can go on today, thinking about the amount of work, I have as a yardstick what it was like to have 3 children under 5, and that's really hard work. All 3 of them were children who were required to behave reasonably, whose reading, whatever they read, was very well censored. And Jo often speaks, they never watched any of the soaps, and now they're all addicted to them, and that's quite true. They didn't, they weren't allowed the sorts of invasions, adult invasions, and I think, on looking back on their childhood, that it had something of the ideal in it.
It pains you when you're that age that you haven't got the things that other kids have got. So, yeah, there was a veto on Cindy dolls, and everyone else at school had one, you know, so I felt very miffed about that. But also, I mean, we weren't allowed particular comics either. She was very strict about that, so, you know, when Jackie came out, for example, that was like everyone was reading it at school, and it was all about kissing boys and makeup, and it was all very exciting. And, you know, I had some crappy old comic like Bunty, I think, which was boring as hell.
I didn't want her to have things like Barbie dolls. I can't bear those elongated sort of... I experience them as rather unpleasantly sexualised dolls. Now, Jo often jokes about that too, and I did toy with the idea of buying her one, make up for never letting her have one. I didn't want her to be precocious. I wanted her to be a child.
All you want when you're a kid is what your peer group's got, so that you're not bullied and left crying in the playground, as I was on so many occasions.
She would always be in the very top group in the school. She was in the brownies, she was in the guides, she did all of those conventional things and enjoyed them.
I liked school, and so I didn't ever muck about really, and I was never really a problem. Well, not up until about the age of 15 anyway. My parents moved to Hastings and arranged for me to move schools. I was very happy where I was. I didn't actually consciously decide to behave badly, but I did.
Difficulties of mine, I found it impossible to face the reality that the child becomes the young person who makes the decisions for himself. At that stage, Jo needed to, wanted to, was right to be independent, and I found that whole era very tough. I think parents who are experiencing the time of their children's adolescence are in for trial.
But I very rarely went to school. I went and just signed in for register, and then I just used to go down the seafront and sit in a cafe all day and smoke fags and read magazines and, you know, not be at school very often. So through doing that, I kind of met the sort of the Hastings ne'er-do-wells, you know, and sort of just got into sort of drinking and a bit of drugs and that kind of thing.
The child, the young person, can't concede that you're genuinely worried about their well-being. You are, but it's also a matter of, I said you should be in by 11 and you're not. So it was those sorts of differences, those sorts of rebellion that are common to us all that were so for Joe?
I don't think my parents had any idea what I was up to, and if they had done, they would have gone mad. I mean, it was like bad enough the bits they did find out.
Well, Joe had one particular relationship with a young man whom I felt very negative about, and I felt that he would be a risk for her, that it would be possible that she would get into trouble.
He was like your real kind of, aristocrat layabout, really, and he was a heroin addict as well. I kind of like ticked off a list of what would wind my parents up the most, and went round looking for him.
It's fascinating how our children make sure they choose someone who'll irritate us.
My parents gave me an ultimatum. They said to me, either you stop seeing this bloke, or move out, because we just can't stand it any longer. And I kind of saw that as the opportunity I'd been waiting for, really. I thought, great, well, I'll move out then.
She was making her own way and deciding what sort of person she was going to be, and really we had not too much part to play in that, and that's a recognition of your useful life as a parent being pretty well over.
I got a job at Dr. Bernardo's, and I had like a really horrible little bed sit, and got a bit drunk one night and came home and burnt the bed sit down, and went to work. Well, I had the next day off work, so I didn't have anything to wear, because I'd burnt everything that I had, and I was in a bit of a state as well. Didn't go into work the next day. When I did go into work the day after, they had a go at me, so I lost my temper and told them to stick their job up their arse and walked out, and then got halfway down the road and thought, oh God, I haven't got a house, haven't got a job, what am I going to do? So I phoned my mum up. This is about 8 o'clock in the morning. I went, oh Mum. She just turned up, picked me up, and I went to live back home for a bit, and it was actually sort of all right by then. We were getting on much better by then.
My feeling about her is still that feeling that the parent has about the child, that I can't bear anything to go wrong for her, and I feel murderous towards people who might hurt her.
She worries about me as much as she ever did, and I just think it must be very irritating for her, really. I just want to say to her, you don't need to worry, I'm fine, it's all going all right.
We don't have the sort of relationship that I hear people describe where the child sees the mother as a confidant. So the mother gets the account of the love affairs and what the money's going to be spent on and all of those sorts of things.
We've always led our separate lives, and we've always kept certain things separate from one another, and in a way I think that's the way it should be with your mum. I've just always wanted my mum to be my mum and not to be kind of, like a very close friend. I'd feel a bit uncomfortable with that, I think.
Status Quo frontman Francis Rossi in Next of Kin in 30 minutes here on BBC Two, and the Having It All season continues with the mother of all jobs next.